The clock on the wall of Greene's diner showed 2:47 in the morning when Cassandra Monroe finally allowed herself to lean against the counter. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers, the kind that had seen better days 2 years ago. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tired song, casting everything in a harsh white glow that made even the coffee look sickly. Outside, rain hammered against the windows with the force of 1,000 tiny fists, turning the street into a river of reflected neon and desperation. Cassie had been on her feet for 16 hours straight. The morning shift at the laundromat, the afternoon at the grocery store, and now this, the graveyard shift at the diner that paid just enough to cover another week of Grandmother Rose's medication. The bills sat folded in her apron pocket, each one a reminder of how the world measured worth in numbers she could never reach. The hospital had called again yesterday, 3 months behind on payments. They were kind about it, which somehow made it worse. She wiped down the counter for the 100th time, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind drifted to the small apartment where Grandmother Rose waited, probably awake despite the late hour, probably worried. Rose had raised Cassie after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7. Now it was Cassie's turn to be the strong one, even when strength felt like a luxury she could not afford. The bell above the door chimed, sharp and sudden. Cassie looked up to see a man step inside, shaking rain from his dark coat. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-30s, with the kind of presence that made the shabby diner feel even smaller. His suit was expensive, she could tell that much, the kind of fabric that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But his face caught her attention most. Tired eyes that had seen too much, a jawline tight with tension, and an expression that suggested he had not meant to end up here. He took a seat at the counter, water pooling beneath his shoes. Cassie grabbed a towel and slid it across to him, with a small smile. "Rough night," she offered, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something flicker behind those gray eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that someone in a place like this would offer kindness without being asked. "You could say that," he replied, accepting the towel. "Coffee, please. Black." She poured him a cup, the steam rising between them like a question. Neither knew how to ask. "The storm caught you off guard," she said, more statement than question. "I was walking," he admitted, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "Needed to clear my head. Did not check the weather." Cassie nodded, understanding more than he probably intended. Sometimes the storm inside was louder than any outside. She had learned that lesson young. "Well, you picked the right place. We never close, and the coffee is strong enough to wake the dead." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "What's your name?" "Cassie. Short for Cassandra." She hesitated, then added, "And you are?" "Julian." He did not offer a last name, and she did not press. In a place like this, at an hour like this, people came to escape their names, not advertise them. They fell into an easy rhythm after that. Cassie refilled his coffee twice while tending to the handful of other late-night souls scattered throughout. The diner, a truck driver nursing pie and regret, an elderly woman with a crossword puzzle and secrets in her eyes, a young couple holding hands like they were the only people in the world. Julian watched it all with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing something important. Around 3:30, a commotion erupted near the back booth. The truck driver had spilled his water and, in his fumbling attempt to clean it up, knocked over the elderly woman's coffee. Cassie hurried over with rags and apologies, soaking up the mess while the driver stammered his own sorry words. The woman just laughed, a sound like wind chimes, and patted Cassie's hand. "You are a good girl," she said softly. "The world needs more people like you." Cassie felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say that goodness did not pay medical bills, that kindness could not buy medicine, but instead she just smiled and finished cleaning. When she returned to the counter, Julian was watching her with an expression she could not read. You did not have to do that, he said quietly. Clean up someone else's mess. It is part of the job, Cassie replied, though they both knew she meant something more. Is it? Julian's gaze was steady. Or is it just who you are? Before she could answer, Thomas Greene emerged from the kitchen, his round face flushed with irritation. Cassie, the register is short again. $12. You know the rules. Her stomach dropped. $12. She had covered a customer's bill earlier when his card declined. An old man who looked like he had not eaten in days. She had not thought twice about it. Mr. Greene, I can explain. You can pay it back. Thomas cut her off. Out of tonight's tips. Julian's cup hit the counter with a sharp clink. How much does she make in tips on a night like this? Thomas blinked, surprised by the intrusion. That is none of your business. I'm making it my business. Julian stood, pulling out his wallet. Here's $50. Keep the change. And maybe consider that an employee who cares enough to cover a stranger's meal is worth more than $12 of policy. The air in the diner went still. Thomas sputtered, caught between offense and the crisp bills in Julian's hand, then snatched the money and retreated to his office. Cassie stared at Julian, her heart hammering. You did not have to do that. You are right, he said, his voice soft. I did not have to, but I wanted to. He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, setting it on the counter between them. If you ever need anything at all, call this number. She picked up the card. Julian Hartwell, CEO, Hartwell Industries. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized who he was. One of the wealthiest men in the city, standing in a rundown diner at 4 a.m, defending a waitress he had just met. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Julian paused at the door, rain still hammering outside. He turned back, and for a moment, his carefully constructed walls cracked just enough for her to see the lonely man beneath. Because someone once told me that the measure of a person is not what they have, but what they give when they have nothing left to give. You reminded me of that tonight. Then he was gone, disappearing into the storm like a ghost. Cassie stood, holding his card, the embossed letters catching the harsh diner light, and felt something shift inside her chest. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just the dangerous idea that the world might be bigger than the 4 walls of her exhaustion. She did not know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. And 5 years from now, she would return to give Julian Hartwell a gift that no amount of money could ever buy. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under the door of the small apartment where Cassie lived with grandmother Rose. She had just returned from her shift at the laundromat, her clothes smelling of detergent and other people's lives, when she saw the cream-colored paper on the faded welcome mat. No return address. Just her name written in elegant script that seemed too refined for their humble doorstep. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a letter. Cassie's hands shook as she read the words from Mercy General Hospital. All outstanding medical bills. For Rose Monroe had been paid in full. The balance showed 0. Attached was a receipt for $73,000 settled by an anonymous benefactor. Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the worn couch, the paper fluttering from her fingers like a freed bird. Grandmother Rose emerged from her bedroom, moving slowly with her cane. Her face had regained some color in recent weeks, the new medication finally taking effect, but her eyes still carried the weight of someone who had fought too many battles. Cassie, dear, what is wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost. The bills, Cassie whispered, her voice breaking. Someone paid all your medical bills, every single one. Rose lowered herself beside her granddaughter, taking the paper with trembling fingers. She read it once, twice, then looked at Cassie with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Who would do such a thing? Cassie thought of the business card she had kept in her wallet for 3 weeks now. Julian Hartwell, the man in the expensive suit who had defended her over $12, the billionaire who had walked through a storm and somehow seen her when the rest of the world looked past her like she was invisible. I think I might know. 2 days later, Cassie stood in the lobby of Hartwell Industries, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the sky itself. The security guard had been skeptical when she asked to see Julian Hartwell without an appointment, but when she showed him the business card, something in his expression softened. He made a call, listened, then nodded toward the elevator. 30th floor. Miss Park will meet you. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another dimension. Each floor represented a world further from her own, where people wore confidence, like armor, and spoke in languages of profit margins and corporate strategy. When the doors opened, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional smile extended her hand. Miss Monroe, I am Nina Park, Mr. Hartwell's assistant. He has been expecting you. He has? Cassie's voice came out smaller than she intended. Nina's smile deepened with understanding. He hoped you would come. Follow me, please. The office at the end of the hall was not what Cassie expected. Yes, there was luxury in the polished wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, but there was also warmth, photographs of people, not buildings, books that looked read, not displayed, and Julian himself standing by the window in shirt sleeves, looking more human than myth. He turned when she entered, and she saw that same tired intensity in his eyes. Cassie, I'm glad you came. You paid my grandmother's medical bills. It was not a question. I did. No denial, no false modesty, just truth laid bare between them. Why? Her voice cracked on the word. You do not even know us. Julian gestured to the chairs by his desk, waiting until she sat before taking his own seat. 3 weeks ago, you gave $12 to a stranger who could not pay for his meal. You covered it without hesitation, knowing it would cost you. That same night, you cleaned up a mess that was not yours to clean, and you did it with grace. You showed me something I had forgotten existed. What? Goodness without agenda. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. I have spent the last 15 years building an empire, Cassie. I have made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have won awards, graced magazine covers, been called a genius and a visionary. And yet, I cannot remember the last time I did something that mattered, not really mattered. Cassie felt tears threatening. My grandmother is everything to me. She raised me when I had no one. The bills were crushing us. I worked 3 jobs, and it still was not enough. I was drowning, and I did not know how to stop. I know. Julian's voice was gentle. I had my people look into your situation after that night. I hope you do not mind. I needed to understand who you were. And who am I? The question came out bitter. A charity case? Someone for you to feel good about helping? No. The word cut through the air with unexpected force. Julian stood, moving to the window. You are someone who reminds me why I started Hartwell Industries in the first place. My father, Victor, he built this company from nothing. He grew up poor, worked 3 jobs just like you, fought his way up through sheer will and determination. But success changed him, made him hard. He forgot where he came from, forgot the people still fighting those battles. He turned back to face her, and she saw pain etched in the lines around his eyes. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack at his desk, working on a deal that would have made us another $100 million. In his final moments, he was alone in this office, surrounded by everything he had built and nothing that mattered. I found him. I held him while he died. And his last words to me were, I forgot how to be human. The silence that followed was heavy with shared grief. Cassie understood loss, had felt it carve out pieces of her soul when her parents died. I am sorry, she whispered. I made a promised that day, Julian continued, that I would not make his mistake, that I would find a way to use this wealth, this power, for something more than numbers on a spreadsheet, but I did not know how. Until I met you. He moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. I am not offering you charity, Cassie. I am offering you a job. Real work, real pay, real opportunity. Hartwell Industries is launching a new foundation, dedicated to helping people trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Medical debt, poverty, systemic barriers. I want you to help me run it. Cassie stared at him, her mind reeling. I have no experience. I never even finished college. I had to drop out to take care of my grandmother. You have something better than experience. You have lived it. You understand what these people are facing because you have faced it yourself. Your empathy, your strength, your refusal to give up even when the world was crushing you. That is what I need. That is what this foundation needs. I do not understand. Cassie shook her head. Why me? You could hire anyone. People with degrees, with credentials. Julian sat on the edge of his desk, his posture open and honest. Because 3 weeks ago, in a diner at 4 in the morning, you showed me that humanity still exists. You gave when you had nothing to give. You smiled when you had every reason to despair. You made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could learn to be human again. Tears spilled down Cassie's cheeks. What if I fail? What if I am not good enough? Then we will learn together. He offered her the folder. This is a contract, 6-month trial period, full benefits, salary that will let you and your grandmother live comfortably. No strings attached. If it does not work out, you walk away with 3 months severance. But I think it will work out, Cassie. I think you are exactly who you need to be. She opened the folder with shaking hands. The numbers on the salary line made her dizzy, more than she had made in a year, working 3 jobs. Health insurance, retirement benefits, things she had only dreamed about. I do not know what to say. Say yes. Julian's smile was small but genuine. Say you will take a chance on this, on yourself, on the idea that sometimes good things happen to good people. Cassie thought of Grandmother Rose, waiting at home with hope in her eyes. She thought of all the nights she had cried herself to sleep, wondering if tomorrow would be the day they lost everything. She thought of the old man in the diner whose meal she had paid for, and the truck driver who had apologized for his clumsiness, and every other person she had met who was just trying to survive in a world that seemed designed to break them. Yes, she said, her voice stronger now. Yes, I will do it. The smile that broke across Julian's face transformed him. For a moment he looked younger, lighter, as if a burden he had carried for years had finally begun to lift. Welcome to Hartwell Industries, Cassie Monroe. I think you are going to change the world. That evening, Cassie returned home to find Grandmother Rose sitting in her favorite chair by the window, the one that caught the afternoon sun. The old woman looked up as Cassie entered, her eyes searching her granddaughter's face. Well? Cassie knelt beside her, taking Rose's weathered hands in her own. He gave us a miracle, Grandma. He paid your bills, and he gave me a job, a real job with benefits and a salary and everything. Rose cupped Cassie's face with gentle fingers. This man, Julian, he must have a good heart. He has a broken heart, Cassie said softly, but maybe we can help him fix it. That is how grace works, my darling girl. Rose's eyes glistened with wisdom earned through 8 decades of living. We receive it when we need it most, and then we pass it on. You have been given a gift. Now you must decide what to do with it. Cassie thought about that as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of her small room. Julian had freed her from the crushing weight of debt and desperation. He had given her hope when she had forgotten what hope felt like. But more than that, he had seen her, really seen her. not as a project or a tax write-off, but as a person worthy of investment. She made a promise to herself in the darkness. She would not waste this chance. She would work harder than she had ever worked before. She would learn everything she could about running a foundation, about helping people, about turning wealth into meaningful change. And someday, somehow, she would find a way to give Julian Hartwell the one thing his money could never buy. She would show him that his faith in humanity was not misplaced, that goodness still existed in the world, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the belief that they matter. 5 years from now, she would make good on that promise. But tonight, for the first time in longer than she could. Remember, Cassie Monroe fell asleep without the weight of the world on her shoulders. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse apartment filled with expensive things and quiet loneliness, Julian Hartwell did the same. 5 years had passed like a river finding its course, steady and transforming. The girl who once worked 3 jobs to survive had become Cassandra Monroe, director of the Hartwell Foundation, a woman whose name appeared in philanthropy journals and whose programs had lifted thousands from the same desperation she once knew. The foundation's offices occupied 3 floors of Hartwell Industries now, bustling with caseworkers, counselors, and coordinators who treated every file not as paperwork, but as a human life waiting to be changed. Cassie stood at her office window on a crisp autumn morning, watching leaves dance across the plaza below. Her reflection showed a woman transformed, not by expensive clothes or professional polish, though she wore both well now, but by purpose. Her eyes carried the same kindness they always had, but now they held confidence too. She had learned that empathy and strength were not opposites, but partners in the work of changing lives. Her phone buzzed with a message from Nina Park, Julian's assistant who had become a trusted friend. "Can you come to the main office? It's about Julian. It's important." Cassie's heart quickened with concern. She had not seen Julian much in recent months. He had been pulling away, canceling meetings, delegating more to his executive team. When CTI, they did cross paths. She saw shadows beneath his eyes that no amount of rest seemed to erase. The foundation ran smoothly without his daily input now, which should have pleased him. Instead, it seemed to hollow him out further. Nina met her at the elevator, her professional composure cracked by worry. "He's been in his office for 3 days straight. Won't eat properly, barely sleeps. The board meeting yesterday, he just sat there, Cassie, like he was watching his life through glass." "What happened?" Cassie asked as they walked the familiar corridor. "I don't know. Success, maybe?" Nina's laugh held no humor. "Hartwell Industries just closed the biggest deal in company history, $2 billion. The business magazines are calling him the King Midas of our generation. And he looked at the news like it was his death sentence." They stopped outside Julian's office. Through the frosted glass, Cassie could see his silhouette at the window, motionless as a statue. "Let me talk to him," she said softly. Nina nodded, squeezing her arm. "He listens to you. He always has." Cassie entered without knocking. The way she had earned the right to do over 5 years of friendship and shared purpose. Julian did not turn from the window. He wore the same suit from yesterday, his tie loosened, his usually neat hair disheveled. The office that had once felt warm now seemed cold despite the afternoon sun streaming through the glass. "You should be celebrating," Cassie said quietly, moving to stand beside him. $2 billion. That's extraordinary." "Is it?" His voice was hollow, scraped raw. "I made my company richer. I made shareholders happy. I added more zeros to accounts that already have too many. Tell me, Cassie, what did I actually accomplish?" She studied his profile, seeing the truth he was finally admitting. "You're exhausted." "I'm empty." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that frightened her. Resignation, the look of someone who had stopped fighting. 5 years ago, you walked into this office and gave me hope. You showed me that the foundation could work, that we could actually help people. And you were right. Look at what you've built. Thousands of families freed from medical debt, hundreds of people trained for new careers, children who will grow up with possibilities I helped create. We helped create, Cassie corrected. Julian, none of this happens without you. No. He shook his head. It happens because of you. Your vision, your heart, your refusal to treat people like statistics. I just signed the checks, and now I realize that's all I've ever done. Sign checks, move money around, build empires that don't need me. He moved to his desk, pulling out a folder she recognized. Her original employment contract, now yellowed, at the edges. Do you remember what I told you that day? That you reminded me why my father started this company? That you made me believe I could learn to be human again? I remember. Her throat tightened. I lied. The words fell like stones. Not intentionally, but I lied. I haven't learned. I've just been watching you be everything I'm not. Compassionate, connected, real. While I've stayed up here in my tower pretending that writing checks makes me a good person. Cassie felt something crack open in her chest. A truth she had been carrying for 5 years without knowing how to deliver it. Sit down, Julian, please. He looked surprised by the command in her voice, but obeyed. She pulled a chair close, near enough to see the exhaustion etched in every line of his face, the loneliness that wealth had never managed to fill. 5 years ago, you saved my life, she began. Not just by paying those bills, though that was part of it. You saved me by seeing me, by believing I was worth more than my circumstances. Do you have any idea what that gift meant? I just paid some bills, Cassie. Anyone with money could have done that. No. Her voice was fierce now. You did something no amount of money could do. You gave me dignity. You offered me a job, not charity. You treated me like an equal when I had every reason to feel small. You showed me that my struggles had value, that my empathy was an asset, not a weakness. You didn't just change my circumstances, Julian. You changed how I saw myself. She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather journal, worn from 5 years of use. Every person we've helped through the foundation, I've kept their stories here. Not just their statistics or success rates, but who they really are. Their hopes, their fears, their dreams that seemed impossible until we made them real. She opened the journal to a marked page. Rebecca Chen, single mother of 2, buried in debt after her ex-husband abandoned them. We paid off her debt and got her into nursing school. She graduated last month, top of her class. She wrote to me last week. Want to know what she said? Julian nodded, something flickering in his eyes. Attention, maybe. The first spark she had seen today. She said, "Tell Mr. Hartwell that he didn't just save my life. He showed my daughters that the world still has good people in it. That kindness is real. That's the gift I'll pass on to every patient I treat." That's what you did, Julian. Not just for her, but for her daughters, for every patient she'll care for in her 30-year career. The ripples of your kindness will touch thousands of lives you'll never meet. She flipped through more pages. David Okonkwo lost his construction job after an injury. Couldn't afford physical therapy. We covered it and retrained him as a project manager. He's now building affordable housing. Thomas Rivera, veteran with PTSD. We got him treatment and support. He's now a counselor helping other veterans. Yuki Tanaka escaped domestic violence with her children. We gave her emergency housing and legal support. She's now a lawyer specializing in family law, helping other women escape. Cassie closed the journal, holding it to her chest. Every single person in here, they're living proof that you matter, Julian. That your choice to help me 5 years ago created a wave of goodness that keeps spreading. You think you've just been signing checks? You've been restoring faith in humanity one life at a time. Tears spilled down Julian's cheeks, silent and unbidden. I don't feel it, I don't feel connected to any of it. I come to the office, I make decisions, I go home to an empty apartment. I have everything and I feel nothing. Because you're still alone in your tower, Cassie said gently. You created the foundation, but you haven't let yourself be part of it. You haven't met the people whose lives you've changed. You haven't heard their stories, held their children, celebrated their victories. You've kept yourself separate, like you're not worthy of the joy you've created. She stood, extending her hand. Come with me. Today. Right now. Let me show you what your money has actually bought. Julian looked at her hand for a long moment, then slowly took it. His grip was tentative, like someone learning to trust again. Where are we going? To remember why any of this matters, they took her car, leaving the tower behind. Cassie drove through the city as afternoon faded to evening, narrating the landscape of change. That medical clinic, we funded it. It serves 5,000 patients a year who couldn't afford care otherwise. That job training center, we built it. 60% of graduates find employment within 3 months. That playground, we renovated it so kids in this neighborhood have somewhere safe to play. She pulled up to a community center in a neighborhood Julian had probably never visited. Inside, the weekly family dinner was in full swing. 50 people crowded around tables, sharing food and laughter and stories. When Cassie entered, a wave of recognition and warmth swept through the room. Miss Monroe! A little girl with braids and a gap-toothed smile ran up, hugging Cassie's legs. Her mother followed, eyes bright with tears. Cassie, thank you for coming. The woman saw Julian and paused. Is this him? Is this Mr. Hartwell? Cassie nodded. Julian, this is Maria Santos and her daughter Luna. The foundation helped Maria after she fled an abusive situation. Maria did not hesitate. She stepped forward and hugged Julian with the fierce gratitude of someone who had been saved. You gave us our lives back. We have an apartment now. Luna goes to a good school. I have a job I love. You did this. More. People gathered around, each with their own story. A man who had been homeless now working as a chef. A woman who had nearly lost her home now stable and supporting her elderly parents. A teenager who had been headed toward gangs now applying to college. They did not just thank Julian. They showed him photos, introduced him to their children, invited him to share their meal. Julian sat at one of the tables, surrounded by noise and life and messy, beautiful humanity. He held Luna on his lap while she told him about her favorite subject in school. He listened to an elderly man describe his granddaughter's wedding that he could attend because they had helped with his heart surgery. He accepted a plate of homemade tamales from a woman who insisted he eat because he looked too thin. And slowly, as the evening unfolded, Cassie watched the walls around Julian's heart begin to crumble. She saw him laugh at a child's joke, saw him wipe tears when a father described watching his son graduate high school, saw him hold a photograph with trembling hands when a widow showed him a picture of her late husband, whose final months had been comfortable because they had paid for hospice care. When they finally left, the sky dark with stars, Julian sat in the passenger seat in silence. Cassie drove without speaking, letting him process. Finally, as they neared his building, he spoke. I've been so afraid of feeling anything that I stopped feeling everything. My father died alone because he forgot how to connect. I thought I was honoring his memory by building the foundation, but I was making the same mistake, keeping myself separate, protected, empty. He turned to her, his face illuminated by the streetlights. You didn't just run a foundation for me, Cassie. You've been trying to save me too, haven't you? She pulled over, putting the car in park so she could meet his eyes. 5 years ago, you gave me freedom. You showed me I was worth more than my circumstances. Tonight, I wanted to give you the same gift. What gift? The knowledge that you matter. Not because of your money or your company or your success. You matter because you're human, Julian. Because you chose kindness when you didn't have to. Because that choice created a ripple that will never stop spreading. The people you met tonight, They don't love your money. They love what your compassion made possible. They love the hope you gave them. That's the gift no money can buy. Connection, purpose. The knowledge that you're part of something bigger than yourself. Julian reached for her hand, holding it with a gentleness that spoke of new beginnings. I don't know how to do this, how to be part of it all. I've spent so long alone. You're not alone anymore, Cassie said softly. You have a foundation full of people whose lives you've touched. You have me, your friend who understands what it means to be lost and found. And you have yourself, finally ready to step out of that tower and into the world you've been healing. They sat together in the quiet car. Two people who had saved each, other in different ways, both learning that redemption was not a destination, but a journey taken together. Grandmother Rose had been right all those years ago. Grace arrives when we need it most, and then we pass it on. Julian Hartwell had freed Cassie from misery with his wealth. But tonight she had given him something far more valuable. She had shown him that his life had meaning beyond the zeros in his bank account, that he was loved not for what he possessed, but for who he chose to be. And as they drove through the city lights, both of them knew that this was not an ending but a beginning. The start of a new chapter where Julian finally learned to live in the world he had helped create, surrounded by the messy, beautiful, irreplaceable gift of human connection, the gift that no money could ever buy.